support us where you can. We do our best to get out and about and get our message over. And tonight's talk is very much part of what we're about. It's about sustainable gardening, but it's also gardening with wildlife, which has become a big part of how I go about things. So hopefully you'll get. I tried to make these as practical as possible, as full of ideas as possible. So hopefully you'll get a few things out. You might have seen my plots before in previous. Yeah, next slide, please, Bob.
Sorry.
That's all right. Next, you've seen my plots before. I've done allotment talks and balcony talks. And one thing you'll know about me is I like a really mixed, diverse plot. So at my garden, whether it's a balcony or my allotment or anywhere I garden, I like it to be as mixed and as full and as different as possible. And I think that's probably the key to good organic gardening, but also to good gardening generally, because I think a site that's got a lot of resilience and a lot of build up of wildlife balances itself out in the end. So these are some of my ideas as we move forward. Cheers, Bob. So let's start with this fella because he's everybody's favourite, and has obviously been under quite a lot of pressure in recent years. I think what has happened is a combination of cars, the fact we all drive nowadays and they've got to get across roads, but also I think heavy use of pellets, which are indiscriminate basically, so that maybe knocks down the food chain. But I think I like this chap because, well, one, I'll show you in a minute why I like him particularly, but also he's a big eater of slugs and he deserves his chance. So one of the things that's gone on, and you might have heard of this, is we do what you call hedgehog highways, where on the bottom of your fence you'll have a plank of wood called a kickboard. You cut a hole in that kickboard so any hedgehog can move from garden to garden. It's a really, really simple thing to do, but it means that hedgehogs can move from place to place without having to cross roads. And it's been done a lot in South and East London, and it's been very successful. Hedgehog populations have increased. And it's not just about the hedgehog, it is also a gardener's friend. They are massive eaters of slugs and snails, so they have a big purpose for the gardener as well. Next slide, please, Barbara. So what I love, this is one of the stories I love about making room for nature. So you can see a hedgehog house here, very basic. You have a long corridor, and then you have a chamber basically, and it doesn't have to look ugly because you can cover it in soil and plant plants into it, or we've done them with little wildflower sowings over the top. The reason you have the long entrance, you can see, is just to stop cats and foxes and stuff. It protects the hedgehog. But on the right, that really quite ugly looking setup there with slabs and stuff, this was on the allotment. A next door neighbour, I've got an Irish guy called Peter who I often chat to, and I said to him about hedgehog houses. So we constructed this off waste materials, I suppose, that were lying around, and we built this hedgehog house, and within 6 weeks we had a hedgehog. And I live like 800 meters from the North Circular in North London. The North Circular is one of the busiest roads in Europe, and yet somehow a hedgehog turned up, and actually two of them. We had a breeding pair in there, and it's a really good example. I start the talk this way because it's a really good example of how if there's provision, nature will come in and do its part, and I think that is a really good example of it. Next slide, please, Barbara. The other thing I'm a big fan of, because it's kind of overlooked, are bats and bat boxes. If you're lucky enough to have some water in the garden, if you've got a pond or anything like water source, and you've got a south-facing area, a bat box is a brilliant thing. And you think, well, you don't think of bats as being part of a garden particularly, but they're really amazing predators. Where I'm in North London, it's got warmer and warmer in recent years. We get quite a lot of mosquito, and they're big mosquito eaters. They're a predator that sometimes get overlooked. And I think at dusk, we get them here off my balcony and they flutter around. They're quite incredible things. And I think if you took them out of the equation, again, you're breaking that chain of nature. So I think a little bat box you can put up if you've got a south-facing or a south-east, south-west-facing area, not so far from water. I think a bat box is a great thing to put in a garden, particularly important for biodiversity. Next slide, please, Barbara. Oh, I don't know what's there's doing then. Sorry, next slide, please. Move on from that one. So the other thing I'm going to talk about is one of my favourite insects, I suppose you'd call it, but it's a hoverfly, okay? And the hoverfly is particularly amazing because one hoverfly's larva will eat up to 500 aphids. But there are about 22 types of hoverfly in this country. So I think we should all build what is brilliantly known as a hoverfly lagoon, which sounds very posh. Sounds like they're on holiday, I know. But this is just basically a jar That's like, there's no drainage in it. It's a concealed jar, and you put water in it, and you put leaves and earth and general debris, and you put these bamboo lines in, because what happens is the hoverfly has a long tail, and it sets its pupae in the bottom of the jar, and then gradually, as it pupates, they climb up the bamboo and then fly out into the world. Doesn't need to be a posh one, like you can see there. The one on the right is literally a milk carton that's been cut in two, that some children drew a picture on for me. Same thing. It's like a cup. You put leaves and soil and debris into it. Just make sure you've got some way of the larvae climbing out when it pupates that can fly out. And I think you could dot those through a border, an herbaceous border, or even in a balcony garden into a container, and encourage your hoverfly in. One, you're supporting those populations, but two, there are excellent aphid control. Next slide, please, Barbara. The obvious ones, I suppose, we always hear about are bee hotels. Obviously, in this country, we have about 220 types of bee. We always think of bees as swarmers, but actually only 3 kinds of bee actually swarm. All the rest are what you call single bees or solo bees. Incredibly important pollinators, and obviously been under pressure in the last couple of decades in terms of population. Very easy to get them into the garden. You see, these are various elements we can use. You can have a big posh one like that down in the right hand corner, then you can buy from a garden centre, or you can have one, I think we did that on Blue Peter, which is just a baked bean can, which has been the top and the bottom cut off it, been painted, and then put straws in. Or if you want it even simpler than that, things like mason bees, very important. Just drill some holes in the brickwork if you've got a wall, 4 or 5 holes. And what this enables the bee to do is to go into the back of it. The female bees go into the back of it. They seal themselves in. A male bee will get into the front of the hole as a protection, and that way they can lay their eggs and produce the next generation. Such a simple thing to do, but again, you're doing a small task which encourages biodiversity and pollinators. It's quite a little practical project you can do with the kids as well, or the grandchildren if you so wanted to. Next slide, please. Here they are. So again, this is quite an organic message in a way, because there's your hoverfly. I might have mentioned this before, but if you want hoverfly in the garden, plant some fennel, let it flower. Hoverfly comes. The fennel is a biannual, which kind of seeds quite easily. So you can plant it in August for next year, sow seed now, prick it out, put it in the garden, and you'll get next year it will come in. But the hoverfly is very good. But the main point is patience, I think, a little bit with organic and biodiversity gardening. Like the ladybird, on my allotment, everyone's got broad beans in April. Everyone gets black fly. Everybody panics. Actually, if you wait a little bit, these characters and their larvae as well, really important, will turn up and sort that problem for you. So allowing nature the room to do its thing is quite an important part of a biodiverse garden. Next slide, please. One thing that's well overlooked as well, I love moths, I really do. And because they kind of come out at night, they're kind of unsung heroes. They reckon there's about 600 species of moth in this country. Massively important pollinators, also predators. But we only ever see them when they're flying around the light bulb. So they have a bit of a bad reputation. There's lots of plants that will encourage them, evening primrose, honeysuckles, lots of stuff if you want to encourage them into the garden. In times when it's lean, I learned from a guy called Nick Baker. I don't know if you know him. He was a wildlife presenter, really encourage. Encourage.
Oh,
You all right? It's okay. I can still see you. If you want to encourage moths into your garden, they're incredibly important, and I think incredibly beautiful. Butterflies get all the praise because they're much more colourful. But actually, the moth population in this country is very unique and very diverse and very beautiful as well. We need to do our little bit for them. They're a little bit out of sight, out of mind, so we need to think about them as well. Next slide, please. And the butterfly pies, if we're going to butterflies now, again, this is the sort of thing I do if it's early season or and there was a cold snap so most of the time butterflies will be able to find pollen if you've planted correctly. You can provide assistance with butterfly pies, which is basically a dish. You put in some soil, a little bit of sugar, okay, or you can put some rotten fruit in, like a banana going over. This one's quite posh because there's a mango in that one. very international. But that's a really good way to provide extra food for butterflies. Okay, and again, they've been in quite under population pressures. So if you go through periods of adverse weather and you haven't planted for butterfly, there's lots of plants that will like it. A butterfly pie is quite a nice idea. Next slide, please. This is quite an important one as well, and people don't really think about this. And these are bee stations. I'm sure we've always seen in a pond where a bee gets caught on the water and it's on the top of the water. Bees, like all of us, need water to drink, like all forms of life. But these are quite nice. You can make these yourself. You can buy posh ones. But these are just little cups on stalks. You put them through a pollinator border, fill them with water, and it just allows them to somewhere to go and have a drink, basically. You also get the little birds in as well. The wrens and stuff will come and drink out of these. So I really recommend a bee station, and you can see if they're decorated right and they're made nicely and you dot them through a border, they're a brilliant addition. So I think they're a very good idea. Next slide, please. And let's have a little word for the things most people don't like, which is a shame, like wasps. Poor old wasps. How bad a reputation have they got? Wasps are an incredible creature. They are predators. They are pollinators. They control things like thrips and aphids and stuff like this. We only ever kind of come across them again, a bit like the poor moth, when maybe we're having an ice cream or a pint of cider in late August, and they get that reputation. But they really are incredibly important part of the whole food chain. So think about that next time you see one. I think they obviously nobody wants a big nest of them outside their back door, but if they're in the garden, they should be let be, I think. And also, again, you can put in pollinator plants that will help them. Spiders, I have a big soft spot for spiders. I worked in Africa for a while, so all the spiders in the UK look quite tame to me, believe it or not. They're a massive predator, again, a massive predator. That's slugs and snails. I mentioned earlier about pellets. The things about pellets is they're indiscriminate. There are 22 types of slug and snail in this country. Only 3 of them will eat and damage our plants. This is a leopard slug down in the right-hand side there. It's a massive recycler. It eats debris, it eats something that recycles it. A really important part of the garden. So it's important to be able to identify what's damaging your crops and what should be there and what's important. The last one in the top right is, this is an earwig. When I was a kid, you used to see a lot of earwigs. I can't really remember last time I saw one, but the earwig is an incredibly important predator. In fact, before we started using chemicals in orchards, earwigs was encouraged because it's a natural woolly aphid eater. So it's a really important aphid predator. It's very sensitive to chemicals or change, which is one of the reasons why we're not seeing it now. But I've got ideas how you get earwigs into your garden, and we'll come on to that a bit later. But hopefully we'll see more of them because they do a really important job. Next slide, please. So this is not everyone's favourite. This is a hibernaculum. Basically, this is for snakes. Most people don't like it. It's not just snakes, reptiles. We have a native lizard in this country, which is in massive danger. It's been getting rarer and rarer. Part of the food chain again. The grass snake, I see quite a lot of them when I go fishing. They're amazing swimmers. Adders are much more rare. Adders they won't come into cities and gardens. They're much too. I suppose it's probably grass as well. But all this is a big pit. You dig a big pit. You fill it with crocks and brick or whatever. You put 2 drain pipes or access areas into it, and it just allows snake or lizard to hibernate. Basically, somewhere for them to go in the winter to stay out of the way. When I worked in Africa, the Africans never killed the snakes, even though they were put like mambas and stuff like poisonous snakes, deadly. They never killed them because they controlled the rat populations. So they play a really important role. I know that's quite ugly, that pile with a bit of corrugated iron. They love corrugated iron because it keeps that area warm, keeps the body heat. But you can plant wildflowers into that. You can sprinkle some wildflower over the seed of that to hide that in the back of the border. Most people freak out when I say snakes, but I'm a big fan of them, so I'm putting it in there. Next slide, please. And this is quite a funny story because I built one of these at Gardeners World Live last year in my biodiversity garden that I made with Garden Organic. And I put my rubber snake in. It looks very realistic, and they told me to take it away. Some people are very sensitive about these things. I think that looks amazing. I just do. I think it does, but it shows you we've got maybe a bit of an inbuilt fear of them, but they are incredibly important animals. They really are. Next slide, please. So the big one, I suppose, as well, is we all bug hotels. I go to a lot of schools and community gardens. There's always a bug hotel. Normally they look awful. It's like a load of pallets with stuff shoved in them and no real effort made. My advice would be, especially in communities or schools, is have a design competition. You can see the one on the left made into a mushroom. It's a beautiful piece of art. Same thing, everything's recycled on it. It's just some imagination gone into it, okay? And the reason these are important is they house things like beetles, earwigs, centipedes, millipedes, all these recyclers that are important to the general tick over the garden. And if you have just got pallets, why not just put a green roof on, you know, a little bit of, so you're making it a garden feature, give it a look. One of the things we do at the moment is we plant upside down tree stumps and they make brilliant bug hotels. So a little bit of imagination involved is it makes it good fun. And you can, again, you can do that in a school, your own garden or in your community. Just like make, you know, I see a lot of quite ugly bug hotels where it's kind of half an effort. I think we maybe should put our shoulder to the pump a bit more. Next slide, please. And here's a good way as well to do them if you've not got a lot of room. You know, a gabion. A gabion is something that holds back soil. You see them alongside railways and stuff. It's just a metal cage. Makes a brilliant bug hotel. Fill that with cone pines and straw, and it's just a brilliant. You can plant into it as well. Or the brilliant idea is to get 2 hanging baskets, knock them together, fill them again with material that will give cover for beetles or whatever, pine cones and straw, and then you can just hang that from a tree. It's just a simple little brilliant idea. Looks great, but will imbibe into the garden to help biodiversity. Next slide, please. I think one of the biggest ones you can have for biodiversity in the garden is a bog garden. If you've got a garden, the best thing probably is a pond. But if you've got young children or grandchildren, or you don't want the maintenance problems of it, a bog garden is just a brilliant thing. And it's just a pond that's been backfilled basically. So you dig out an area like you would a pond. You put sand into it. I'll show you a bit more of this in a little while. You put sand into it. You put a butyl liner in, but you puncture that butyl liner. And then you put the soil back, and then you've got such a brilliant range of plants that can grow in a bog hotel. Astilbes and pentstemons and Rodgersias and Pegasites. They're just a brilliant range of plants that can go in a bog hotel. Put some rocks in as well, some old bits of wood, and wildlife will come. It's an excellent way to get biodiversity in the garden. Next slide, please. Obviously, bird life. I absolutely. I put these up for a reason because I have these stick-on bird feeders. I'm sure I've showed you them before. They bring me incredible pleasure. But I've learned actually in the spring and summer to hold back off them. Okay, I think that probably you should let the birds find food naturally in the spring and the summer. There's a lot of it out there. So I'd rather my blue tits and my great tits were picking off the caterpillars and the aphids than, although as much joy as it gives me, than coming to a bird feeder. So I would say, my advice, for the sake of biodiversity and making sure you've got a mix in the garden, is I don't mind in the winter when food is scarce, maybe give up the bird feeder for those months. That's a hard thing to do, I know, because there's so much pleasure involved. But yeah, let them try and graze and use the natural food in the spring and the summer. Next slide, please. And of course, the big thing you can do, because I still get all the little birds visiting my balcony, is just put water out for them. You know, actually, literally this morning, I had a robin bathing in one of the drip trays on my balcony. So they will still come, and you need to give them water. We're just coming into a right warm period again. It's going to be like 30 degrees on Friday. This is quite an important time to make sure your birds are getting a drink, basically. And then they do all the other jobs they do, mainly giving us massive pleasure. Next slide, please. Trying to make also your own bird food if you can. This is maybe a bit more political in some ways, but most of the bird food we buy is imported from China. It's a big business. It's like billions of pounds worth of business, but it all gets flown in from other countries. Not nice little suet and some fresh raisins, local British grown nuts, sunflower seeds. Try and make your own. I think that's quite a nice thing to do as well. And so you're covering the carbon footprint a bit, but also you're giving more natural food that hasn't been created a long way away and then flown into the country. And actually, in my experience, the birds demolish this a lot quicker, to be honest with you. They really do. Next slide, please. So let's start with square one, really. We've talked about soil many times. You know, garden organic, it's our key one thing. to make sure we got healthy. The most amazing fact, when I started as a gardener 42 years ago, we didn't know, there's nowhere near as much about soil as we know now. Now they're saying at least 40% of life on Earth is in our soil. So you've got this entire universe there, and within that universe you've got balance. So if you've got funguses, you'll get funguses that control the funguses. There's messaging goes on in it. A healthy soil will keep pest and disease in check. So you've got biodiversity controlling populations. Okay, if you don't have a good soil, then maybe you're powdery mildew over winters. You have a bigger problems with that. You're more likely to get big pest problems if the soil isn't being looked after. Next slide, please. And also the compost bin. I'm going to give you a tip here. I'll give you a book read. You'll know David Goulson, who's a bee expert, who's a professor at Sussex University. He wrote a book called The Jungle Gardener. I really recommend reading it because it's a book that you read it in 2 days. You can't put it down. But he talks about compost bins in it. A compost bin will have up to 2,000 forms of life in a compost, from microorganisms right up to bird life, etc., that will come and feed in them. So while you're creating this amazing stuff to feed your soil to keep that universe happy, you've also got this side universe through your compost bin. Okay, so it's just a really good little fact that what we're looking at, what we think maybe is just decaying material, is also full of life, really important life. Next slide, please. So you're looking at the soil web, the soil life web, basically. So I'm summarising a little bit here. So it will go from nematodes, from microorganisms, up to ladybirds, to insects, then right up to bats. And so if you've got these present in a garden, if you're noticing these things and your compost is rotting well, then you know you're on the right track. You've got a lot of biodiversity going on. Next slide, please.
Ooh.
There you go. I'm going to introduce my friend the slow worm, because I have these on the allotment. I probably mentioned him before, and it makes me remember to tell you that when I turn my compost bin, I only ever turn it with my arms, never a fork or a spade, because I get families of these in the compost bin. It's a good excuse for me to get nice and mucky as well, which I quite like doing. But I have a very little problem with a thing called a keel slug on my allotment, which is a little subterranean slug, slimy little slug that does a lot of damage, and these guys clean it up. But they're incredibly sensitive to any kind of pesticide, any kind of pollution. So if you've got them on your garden or in your allotment, you know you're on the right track. Really good predator in a biodiverse garden. Next slide, please. And compost bins don't need to be, everyone kind of sort of associates them of just sticking them out of the way. This is not the best slide to show you, but actually, you can build a compost bin, but why not, if they're palleted like this, why not plant around the top of them? I grow cut and come again lettuce in the top of my compost bin. Also, you can turn it into a feeder, so you can put a pipe with a plunger, you can fill it with comfrey leaves, put a bucket underneath, and when it rains, you squeeze those comfrey leaves, you get nice organic liquid feed. So you can have it something that's producing fertilizer, you can plant around it, and it's supporting those 2,000 forms of life, and it's feeding the 40% of life on Earth in your soil. It's a win-win. So I think it's quite important to, if you have a compost bin, it's a bit like the bug hotel. Play around with it, make it a feature, make it something that's interesting, because it's a really important part of the garden. Next slide, please. So go on to ponds, and I mean, there's nothing brings in wildlife and biodiversity like a pond. It's a centerpiece. Water is obviously the center of life. You don't water, no nothing. So a little pond's very easy to make. This is quite a big scale, but you can do this on any scale. If I was going to make one, I'd dig out a hole. I'd probably use a hose pipe to shape it the way I wanted to shape it. I would probably then go down 25 centimeters, make a ledge, and then go down 50 centimeters. So you've got like a tiered area. But you're going to use a butyl liner. It's very important to make sure you pad it with sand, and that stops any puncturing of the liner when you go in there. So you're making a pond for a really cheap amount here. Obviously, put your level across with your a plank with a spirit level, so you know you've got it nice and par. And then the big thing to do is, next slide, please, is make sure when you're filling it, you can see the photo on the left, is you put your butyl liner in it, and then you place weights around the edge, and as the water goes in and the thing begins to tighten, you release those weights and gradually it fills up. Okay, and it's a very, very easy way to put water into the garden. And one of the most amazing things about a pond, and I recommend this if you've got one or you're going to make one, It's go out and see it at 11, 12 o'clock at night, because it's alive at night. It really is. And the foxes and the hedgehogs and all the bigger forms of life will come to the garden if there's a water source. I really like these photos. I've done a lot of ponds because I just love the way how natural it looks. If you look this slight slope up and then you gravel to the edge, you can see the slide on the right where it all just looks like it's blending with the landscape. So you've got your butyl in, you filled it with water, then you pebble around the edge of it, and then you can plant into that pebbles. It's a very natural looking way to put a biodiverse feature into your garden. Ponds will attract wildlife. End of story. They're really good for it. Next slide, please. I love this as well. You see, the idea of having these pebbles reaching into the pond like this means newts and frogs and all those amphibians can access the water. They can come in and out. Okay, it's a really nice way to do it. So imagine doing that and then putting some planting through it, some marginals. You create an area which is absolutely perfect for biodiverse gardening. Next slide, please. So here's a good example of it. It doesn't need to be massive. A pond can be small. It can be small to keep the algae not going too much. I'll talk about that in a sec. But this idea of having pebbles and rocks and an old tree stump and plant into it, you're making a really good feature there. That's only like 1.5 meters across and 1 meter wide. It doesn't need to be a huge scale, but those elements of water, some planting and some hard features like rocks and stones will bring in the wildlife. Next slide, please. If you don't want to go to all the trouble of a butyl liner and you're living on clay, I don't know what, I think probably maybe East Midlands might be clayey wise. I know Leicestershire can be. You can just do clay puddling. And all this is a natural way of doing it. It takes a bit of time. Where you see on the right there, you've dug out the pond and you're just then stamping it, compressing it. Clay's full of iron molecules which lock together when they're compressed, when they're trod. That's why you get those big clods when they're in the winter or the dry. That'll make a perfectly good pond as well. Quite a natural way to do it. So no butyl liner, no sand or anything. It's a good way to do it. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, hang on. We're all right. Okay, that's good. I think we're on the next slide. This is just a pond I've been working on this winter. Which I put this up because this is full of wildlife. This is a big one. Again, doesn't matter scale, but one of the things you have to do, what will happen is if you put natives in, is it will get overrun. So now and again, I think late winter, it's worth getting into it and thinning it out. Okay, that's when everything will be dormant. If you're lucky enough to have great crested newts, which are in here, you can only do that in the winter months, January, February, just as a message for that. But if you thin out like this, before it stopped getting overgrown, you can see how beautiful it is because you get the reflection of the trees and stuff in it. But if you thin it out, you make sure you encourage the biodiversity. And just remember, give access in and out. Next slide, please. And this is a thing called frog rocks, which is a great expression. But frog rocks is literally just a pile of stone which gives cover to amphibians. So if you're next to your pond, you've heard me mention this a few times, you can build up some stone and some rock and it just gives them cover, gives them somewhere to stay out the way before they enter the water. There's a great little idea, it really is. Next slide, please. So a few plants to mention. An oxygenator down there in the corner. You can do a Lodia crisper, or there's a few different ones you'll be able to find out. Really important because it stops the algae building up in the pond. And use some natives. We have a very beautiful native nymphia, water lily, which you can then, that goes in the center. You plant that quite deep and you weight it down into the bottom of the water. Or the best one I think is the marsh marigold, the Cluthia, which is on my left. That is a brilliant plant for wildlife. You put that as in a marginal. Very, very beautiful when it flowers. Try to err towards natives to start with for biodiversity. But your range of plants to plant around an area of moisture is massive. As a designer or a gardener who's really keen, the plant list is endless. Next slide, please. Also, a little bit, if you're working in areas, I love these pontoons. So you can walk through an area, if it was a big area like a park. This is just decking that's been raised up on stilts and cemented into place. It means you can walk through a wildlife area without disturbing it. Great for skinny sort of with kids to get the net out and find stuff. But you can do it on a smaller scale, like you can on the pond on the right. Just having some form of somewhere you can stand and look into the pond and maybe get the net out. I think it's a brilliant idea. I first sort of started doing pontoons at Benmore Botanic Gardens years ago, where we put in a Nepalese glade. So it was the higher elevation plants down to low elevation plants, and we built this pontoon that ran through the lot. And it's just a great way to view a garden without treading on stuff or interfering too much. Next slide, please. Big part of gardens is fungus. Is one of my favourite things. These are the ultimate recyclers. We'll all end up eventually succumbing to fungus at some point. I think they're very, very beautiful. There's very few of them that cause damage. Honeysuckle, honey fungus on the right there really only attacks weakened plants, isn't an aggressor. But a piece of wood breaking down like it is on that main picture is a beautiful sight. You can put that into a garden area. I think that's brilliant. The fly agaric, Amanita muscari, is a mycorrhizal association, so it grows on the roots of birch, which means that the two things cooperate, and it's really important for the health of the plant. So a lot of fungus is related to plant health, and so if you've got a garden and you see them popping up 90% of the time, that's a good sign. It's a good sign for biodiversity. Next slide, please. And these are called rot holes. These are interesting. I mentioned earwigs earlier, and traditionally in Kent, when we had the orchards, before we started spraying everything, this is just a section of a tree where a bough's broken off, basically, and you get these dips. They're quite common to see. You'll see them in woodlands quite a lot, but they're called rot holes, and they're little universities in their own right as well. So you'll have one of these on its side. Earwigs love this sort of place, so they used to put them in orchards in Kent before we used chemicals after the war. Brings in the earwig. I see my rot holes again. There you go. All right. Sorry if somebody's lost sound. Sorry about that. I think we're having a few gremlins, but we're getting there. This is a carry on slide from the rot holes, because again, it's creatures with that we would have maybe shooed. I think when I started gardening a long time ago, you saw something crawling around and it was automatically assumed it was an enemy of some sort. Millipedes and centipedes, incredibly important recyclers. Any kind of rotting wood brings them in, and obviously our friend the woodlice, any kind of recycling as well. They'll eat rotten debris, massively important part of the wood chain, of the food chain. So if you see a bit of rotten wood, or you put a bit of rotten wood in your garden, you see these guys, you know your biodiversity gardening is going well. Next slide, please. So a little example here. I've mentioned a few things of what I would consider a biodiverse garden. This is my favourite kind of thing. This is some garden as well, where you've got veg, you've got some brassicas growing there, alongside some antirrhinums, but in the middle of it, an old tree stump turned upside down and sunk into the garden. So you've got the potaging of the garden, plus some wood, which encourages the predators in. It's just a really nice way to do it. And again, you can be quite artistic with this. Next slide, please. And if you want to, this is important, if you want to get areas changed, like a long grass area, or you want to bring in biodiversity, remember plugs and seed collecting is quite a good way to do it. I've got more info on this. Next slide, please. And so I've got to say a little bit for my friend, the dandelion, because it's interesting now. I probably have a problem with the word weeds. I quite like the word I like free plants, but we can't have too many of them. Free as in they're liberal and they can go and come as they want. But obviously, you can't grow what you want if there's too many of them. But this is the first sort of bee cafe, if you like, of the year. So I encourage you to keep 2 or 3 of these. I have them on the allotment. I deadhead them, but they're also great at breaking up poor soil. You can see on the left there, but really important for pollinators. So I think it's important that if you think, well, that's a weed, to know a little bit about it, whether it serves a purpose, because that plays into biodiverse gardening. Next slide, please. And long grass and short grass is the big debate. We tend to be very binary in this country. I've noticed in recent years, I'm an ex-groundsman. I was a groundsman for a few years earlier in my career. So I know a lot about lawns. I know a lot about how to make them look good, but they've kind of fell out of favour a little bit. But I just think we don't need to be binary. We can do both. So you can have areas of long grass and you can let them become natural. I'll show you some photos of when we sort of change it. This is quite interesting because you let the long grass go, you can plant plugs into it, or you can let it generate, and then you can cut these beautiful paths for it. Obviously, it depends on the scale of your garden, but it doesn't have to be one or the other, is my point. Next slide, please. And this is Bristol. This is in Bristol Cathedral, and just wildlife mixes like this, and with paths cut through, make a very beautiful site. And you can either do that with annual wildflower seeds. You can get those really easy, which means they probably last a year and then they die away. Or you can do perennial. Perennial's never as colourful. You need more patience with it, but perfectly reasonable. Wildflowers is becoming the way forward for areas where you've got that you don't use so intensely. So you can use different mixes to make them happen. Next slide, please. And I think a little shout out for short grass from an ex-groundsman. 22 types of pollinator grow in short grass. Short grass, daisy, clover, buttercup, all plantain, all these really important pollinators grow in short grass. So we don't need to get rid of it. Maybe we just don't cut it as low. We don't cut it as short, and you can actually overseed these plants into your short grass. So you can still have your stripy lawn, no problem. To leave it a little bit longer and make sure these plants are present. Certainly, clover is a massively important pollinator, as is daisy, as is achillea, as is yarrow. I mean, don't think that because you've got short grass, you have to sacrifice biodiversity. Next slide, please. And this is a little thing of what I did when you've got a poor bit of ground. So this is at Westminster Abbey. I might have showed you this before, where you've got a bit of ground, nothing will grow in. So I get a hardy annual wildflower mix. Next slide. And then you can do this with it. You can just sow these through. I've been doing a lot of this with cornfield mixes recently. You sow in April, broadcast sow, cut it with a bit of silver sand, sow it onto the ground. These plants are quite tough. They're not. They'll probably come back the next year, but not in the same numbers. I treat this as an annual sowing, basically. It's great for a gap filling. If you've got an area of a border, I don't like to see the soil. You can sow stuff through. It's a really good idea. So cornfield mixes or annual wildflower mixes are an incredibly good way to biodiverse gardening. Next slide, please. And you can literally collect your own. So this is outside my house. This is the car park verge. I might have mentioned before, I usually plant my old bulbs into it. But this valerian, Marguerite daisy, and allium and foxglove are all, and there's a lot of hollyhock in there. It's all just seed I collected last year. So I go out and about with my Tupperware and my pair of scissors. And if one of your plants is overhanging the wall, I will rob your seed, it's for sure. I dry them out at home and then I sow them late September. And then this year it's been absolutely spectacular. And that border has not cost me a penny, only time, because I've collected plants. Things like foxgloves are native. You'll see them everywhere. You wait till they brown up, the seeds are set, bring them home, tap them out on a white piece of paper, okay, and separate the chaff out of them, and then you can sow them straight in. And what happens is, over time, they establish and self-seed. It's a great way to build up a little pollinator border, a little biodiversity border, without any expense whatsoever. I've been very pleased with this border. This year has been fantastic. Next slide, please. And if you haven't got your space for wildflowers all over the place, the good old pallet can come to the rescue. You can do it like this. Lock that onto a wall in a small area. Same principle. Make sure you put something to catch the soil. Put the soil in. Sow hardy annuals in. Again, very reliable plants. You can mix it with some nasturtiums. Get a very colourful display. brilliant for biodiversity. Next slide, please. And naturalising bulbs is a big one as well. This is February gold, so it's a daffodil that's probably the first to flower. Very good for early pollinators, but just putting them into a section of grass, peeling the grass back, putting the bulb in, putting the grass back again, letting them naturalise, letting them thicken out. It's just a great way to get a display. So in a corner of a lawn, maybe you could put 20 bulbs, let them come up. They'll flower, leave it 6 weeks, they die down again, and they'll come the following spring. You're naturalising them. It's a really good way to get colour in spring into your garden. And you can just do that. In a way, it's like long grass gardening, except you're doing it with bulbs, and except 6 weeks after they stop flowering, you can cut them down and turn it back into a lawn. It's a brilliant idea. February gold is an amazing bulb. It really is. Next slide, please. Obviously, a little bit about natives. I do a lot of whip planting. So this is all native trees, hedging trees, superb for small birds. If you can put that somewhere in the garden, if you're going to compartmentalise it, buy it as whips, as 1-year-olds whips. You can plant them into the garden, plant them on a stagger, which means you put one to the left, one to the right, about 20 centimetres apart. When they get a year old, just cut the apex, cut the top out of them, and they thicken out. You can get a little tiny thick hedge, which is good for birds really, really quickly. I think everywhere should have a little native hedge. It doesn't need to be big. You can keep it at 3 foot, 4 foot, but it's a really useful way to do things. Next slide, please. And hardy annuals, I've mentioned before. So this is like your wildlife borders, but your wildflower, I apologise, borders, but this is more succinct. So these are sown in drills alongside my veg or in areas, so much more ornamental, but direct sown again. And these are a lot of favourites: cornflower, calendulas, sunflowers, sweet peas. Really good way to get bands of colour through an area very cheaply. Very good for pollinators, and it just creates that potager experience we're after. Next slide, please. And little things like, if you can do this in your community, I think the next talk I do is on community gardening with you. So I'm giving you a little taster. This is in Leicestershire, where we put fruit borders in and herb borders into areas where nobody's been gardening them. And it's just a really suddenly, like my border out the front with my foxgloves, that was full of litter. No one really cared. When I put that in, suddenly everybody stops and talks about it. It's a really good way to get people engaged. Next slide, please. And the other important thing is to let people know what you're doing if you can. Then everybody feels a part of it rather than it just some individuals. So that's just a little taster for the next talk. Next slide, please. And if you can, a massive one for bees and butterflies is a decent herb border. A raised one like this, they absolutely go mad when they're flowering. I've got a few herb collections I look after. When they're in flower, the bees come, the butterflies come. So this is a lot of thyme in here, but most of it, oregano, all these plants are really good pollinator attraction. You can do it in a small space. You don't even need decent soil. And they're colourful ones. So they're not just about culinary delights. They serve a real purpose as well. Next slide, please. And division, if you're going to keep your plants nice and fresh, a little bit on propagation. Make sure you lift and divide, give away to your friends. That's just the way to keep it all going. Next slide, please. And of course, you'll know that I'm a massive seed grower. So you can grow as much as you can, frugally, choose what you want, get that garden nice and mixed. Remember, I've said in the past, your garden is a canvas, your plants are the paints. So you can really go to town with plants that will help biodiversity. Next slide, please. So I'm going to be not going to rest on this one too long, just a little bit. I'm going to talk about what isn't helpful for biodiversity. Obviously, AstroTurf probably isn't at all, because it's not real for a start, and certainly not helping pollinators. There's a lot of it being used now. I'll help us where it's all going to end up, because after 10 years, you'll probably need to replace it. So that's a lot of plastics going in a landfill somewhere, I should imagine. Pesticides are quite interesting because they're a temporary solution. So you'll use a Roundup and it will kill a thistle or a dandelion, but it won't kill the taproot, and that plant will ultimately come back. But what happens is you also then kill all the smaller, less obvious bits of wildlife, so you affect the food chain, basically. I remember last time I used Roundup, I used it about 15 years ago on a path, and I didn't see any bird life, actually, for a while, where I knocked out that form of life. Peat, we all know about. That's changing. It's a success story in many ways. I work in the industry where the growers find it a problem. Change is never easy, but it's an important carbon sink. My biggest bugbear is people who pave over their front gardens for their cars, really, because it's probably unnecessary. And we get a lot of flooding in London, and I'm pretty sure it's because there's nowhere for the water to go when it rains. So there's some bad one all around. But we won't be negative. I'll move to the next slide. I just feel it's important I mention those things. So I'm going to do my top 12 biodiversity plants to finish off, okay? This is a plant called Arbutus anido, the strawberry tree. I don't know if you know this plant, but this flowers all winter. So you do get some bees that won't hibernate, that carry on through the winter. This is a brilliant pollinator source. It's the only ericaceous plant that grows in alkaline. Rhododendrons and camellias, etc., all acid lovers. This plant will grow in a chalk as well as an acid, but it's a brilliant plant for pollinators through the winter months. I also like to think it's quite beautiful as well. Next slide, please. Of course, in February, so I'm going through the months here in many ways, not a lot about. This is acacia, which is an Australian plant. It's a tree, very, very beautiful. We get them in London. Might be tricky to grow north, probably be all right in the Midlands. And this gets quite big, but it's got these beautiful bright yellow flowers. It needs a bit of space, but it's a great pollinator tree. It's evergreen as well, so the little birds like it. And that's a good one for February. Next slide, please. Laburnum, this is the dead nettle. This is a brilliant plant for bees, March time. They're absolutely, I've got it on my balcony here and it's covered in bees. They absolutely love the flowers. This is a great one for the edging of a border. So if you've got a border with shrubs in or bases, plant this. It's very easy to propagate. You can propagate it in water. Just fill it out on the front of a border, and it's a really good one for pollinators. Next slide, please. Nettles as well. I suppose this depends how much room you've got, but if you've got a little space on the allotment, I'd have a little patch of nettles because one, you can use them as brilliant liquid feed, but they're massively important for moth larvae and caterpillar larvae, butterfly larvae. So yeah, they're worth having around. I know that it's one of those things, a bit like the dandelion, people associate them with getting rid of, but if you can create a little spot for them, I think they're well worth it. Next slide, please. This is a green compost, a green manure, a living compost, if you like, called Felicia. You sow this broadcast in the ground in May. It's great because you just, when it finishes flowering, you just let it drop and the soil eats it. It's a great way to keep this compost. Any bare space is healthy, but it's also the bees absolutely love it. It flowers and flowers and flowers. I've got it on a few sites at the moment, always covered in bees and great for the soil. It's like a living compost, green manure, easy, comes from seed. You can get a big bag of it for like £3. Fill those spaces you're not using and let the bees fill their boots. Next slide, please. Comfrey, Bocking 14, you've heard me mention, brilliant fertilizer, brilliant bee magnet, brilliant compost accelerator, brilliant soil conditioner. Every garden should have a Bocking 14 in it, a Comfrey Bocking 14. Next slide, please. Sunflowers as well. Bees absolutely love them. They really do. They cover them in it. One thing you have a problem with is they tend to get attacked by the slugs and the snails when they're young. And other thing, I've got sites. One site where the rabbits just eat them before they get anywhere. But I find starting them in toilet rolls and getting them up quite big before I set them out has really helped as well. I even use tree guards on them actually to try and protect them. So if you can start them off elsewhere, there's such a range of sunflowers these days. You can get them all shapes and sizes, and I like the big old giant one. It really is a big bee magnet. Next slide, please. And they're just in the basis border colour. Everyone knows that. Got to be good for bees and butterflies, etc. But there's a lot of hybrids on the market. Double flowers, triple flowers, too many petals. I'm not against them. You can have 2 or 3 of them, but try and keep a lot of simple petals in your plant displays because they're the ones that can access the pollen the easiest. Okay, you'll see a lovely big dahlia and you think that's amazing, and the bees looking at it thinking, well, how do I get in there? So you can have your big flouncy dahlia, but also make sure you've got nice, simple, single flowers to make sure you can help the pollinators out. Next slide, please. This is into autumn. This is a native shrub called Viburnum opulus. It's a great plant, beautiful spring colour, white flower. deciduous, beautiful autumn colour yellow, but it has these bright red fruits on it. The birds go mad for it. So when most of the other fruit is running out, this will set. The little birds absolutely love it. So you're keeping something available the whole time. Next slide, please. And this is this is one of the, I'm going to have a mouthful here. This is one of the first plants I've ever met. This is Serostigma plumboidioides. That's a mouthful, difficult after a few beers. But this is a great late autumn pollinator plant as well. It's a small deciduous shrub. You can put that in the front of the border. It has these beautiful bluey flowers on it. Last a few months. Great little plant. It really is. Next slide, please. And then, of course, we're into the depths of winter as our hellebores are great pollinator plants. Again, make sure they're single flowered. None of these double blousy stuff, okay? Nice and single, easy access for your winter flying bees, okay? Next slide, please. And I'm coming to the end now. A few general ones. I know not everybody's flavour, but a heterohelix, an ivy, and a native ivy is an incredibly important plant. Keep it contained. People get annoyed with it when it gets too big because it's got quite thick stems on it, and also it suckers and it gets into the mortar. But if you can trim it and keep it a decent size, brilliant late pollen source, brilliant for birds. It really is a win-win plant. Next slide, please. And then right in the depths of winter, this is Mahonia charity. I don't know if you know this plant. This is a great another pollinator. Very beautiful on those dull, grey, wintry days. It'll cheer you up every time. Next slide, please. And then Cotoneasters, again, come into fruit, look after the birds. Cornubias, a Cotoneaster tree, berries up quite late. The birds love it. One on the right is you get Horizontalis, good for covering walls or hard surfaces. Fruits up nice and late in November, brilliant for little birds. Next slide, please. And I'm sure I've said this before, probably the longest term bit of biodiversity you can ever do is plant yourself a tree. This is the first one I ever planted. 42 years ago. It's quite a size now. And a tree like this, an elm, support 250, 300 forms of life. So this is a whole little universe again. And there's something very satisfying about that. Next slide, please. Also, remember what I've said many times before, the best way to have a biodiverse, healthy garden is to make sure you fill it. Make sure it's layered, have an overstory, a mid-story, a ground cover. You don't want to see the soil. I love the soil, but I don't want to see it. Reduces the watering, reduces the need to weed, gives lots of cover for wildlife, pollinators, biodiversity. You can put your hoverfly lagoons in there. You can put your bee stations, your frog rocks. You can include all those things, your bee hotels, all of that into that area. You've got a really strong biodiverse garden. Next slide, please. I think I'm coming to the end now. It's a quick slide of our garden. We did it, Garden Organics. We did it Gardens World Live last year. So again, all those elements, the pond, the bug hotel, the mixture of flower and vegetable together, rock hotels, all included in one area. Next slide, please. Yep, and that's again another example of it. Very posh bug hotel that is. I think that cost a few quid. You can make your own quite easy if you know a good carpenter, I'm sure. But that range of everything mixed together, it's a good example of what I've been talking about. Next slide, please. So coming to the end, remember to have some fun. I like this. So you can do a biodiverse garden out of old materials, tree stumps, whatever. You don't have to be. You can make. It doesn't have to be regimented. You can have all sorts of fun with it. Next slide, please. This is a good one for the children. So make sure you can do some genes and put some pollinators in the top of it. Next slide, please. And I think that is my final slide. That's me mucking about my sunflowers. That's my end of my talk. Thank you very much.
I don't know if you can hear me, but that was brilliant. If anyone is still on, absolutely brilliant indeed. Are you taking questions?
I am indeed, yes.
Is it okay if I go first?
Yeah, please do.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes. The first question is, I started a bug house, first one I've ever done. So I filled it with some things that I could find around. Can I add to it?
Yes, of course.
Can I put more cones? Because I'm thinking that they're already settled in there and I don't want to disrupt the insects. But am I being silly?
No, I think you're right. I think probably do it because things like bee hotels now all need cleaning anyway, all need maintenance anyway. So I think late winter, early spring, when things start just before they wake up, I'll have a look at it. Just be gentle about it, I would, without a doubt. But you can definitely do it. There's no reason why you can't at all. Things obviously naturally rot as well, like pine cones and straw, and so you can add to it over time as well. But yeah, that's part of the fun, I would say.
It is, yeah, it would be, yes, indeed. Oh, that's good, indeed, because I don't think I put enough in because there's not enough material around. But now there is. I shall consider that then. That's great, lovely. And my other question is, what's the best plant for the winter for feeding the birds?
Well, I certainly think.
I know the teasels.
I mentioned a couple there. I think that native shrub Viburnum opulus is quite a good one. Viburnum opulus. Also,
I wrote that one down.
Cotoneasters are pretty good as well. And then Pyracantha.
Yeah, that was a new one on me.
Cotoneaster is, there's quite a lot of them. So the one you probably want is one called horizontalis, which you can plant up against a wall. It's like a herringbone sort of shape. Very beautiful plant, actually. That's pretty good as well. Mahonias are pretty good. I mentioned them. Certainly ivy. I mentioned that. Virginia ivy, Parthenocyssus is quite good.
We've got a lot of ivy.
Have you got that? Have you got that? That's a good feeling. But also Pyracantha is a very good one. That'll berry up quite late. Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Yeah, and my last question, sorry everybody, is when you're making ponds, do you encourage, I don't know if you do, you obviously do it for other people, do you encourage them to have layers of stone or slabs or a ladder that hedgehogs can climb out of?
Yes, certainly. Remember I showed you this pond without the slide with the pebbles going in and out. Certainly accessing and really, really important, because things will, if you don't, things will drown, that's for sure. But also things like frogs, you want them to come in and out the pond. So definitely a slope, a hard slope out of pebbles, etc., to allow things to come in and out is really important part of it.
Yeah, it is important. Do you have difficulty encouraging people? Because I know a neighbour that was a bit against it.
Yeah, I think people are a bit more educated than they used to be. I think again, as a biodiversity gardener, when I started 40 years ago, if you saw a dandelion, it was gone. We would jump on it, and we kind of think that we were very regimented. It was all very high skilled gardening, but I think that it's encouraging people to let go a bit, to be a bit more freer in their gardening. So hopefully your neighbour,
a bit more natural.
Yeah, we'll start to realise if he wants to help wildlife. If he gets frogs in the garden, they'll help control his slugs. And it's, so all these things have a knock on. Yeah. So yeah, I'm finding more and more people are responsive to it, to be honest with you.
That is very good news indeed.
It is.
That's all my questions. Thank you everybody for being patient, and thank you, very, very informative video.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, very informative. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I ask you? Oh, sorry. Before you all go tonight, and if I know a few of you are having to leave now, please could you score the session in the chat out of 10 if you've got to drop off before we finish.
It's also worth mentioning, if you have a question that you think of later, I think those who I communicate with, Barbara, Louise, you can come to me later. I've no problem answering a question after we've all left, that's for sure.
Thank you.
That's the email address. Sorry, do you want to flick back to that other slide, Bob? That's the email address that you can use to send any questions in, and we'll make sure that they get to Chris for you. And that's another couple of sessions. We've got online sessions we've got coming on that you can join online like the other ones. We have got, I know we're running over slightly, but we have got a couple of questions in the chat, Chris.
Yeah, no problem.
We are using boiling water, salt and vinegar to deal with patio weeds. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. I do the same myself. Boiling water's great. You're having a cup of tea, finish your cup of tea, use the last bit in the kettle. The other thing you can do with pathways as well as you can repoint them. That tends to be a good idea. So what happens over time is the gaps between the patios start to crumble. So you can do that, and that's quite a good way to sort it out as well. But that's fine. That's absolutely fine.
There's another one. If I use blood, fish and bone mix, is it still considered an organic garden?
Well, I would consider it organic, definitely. I think quite a lot of organic gardeners would. Some of them more stricter. There's a big thing, like it's everywhere now. You get vegan gardening who won't use it, but I think it's an organic material. It's certainly not chemical. I've always used it. I've always used bone meal as well. So it is organic. Yeah, yeah. So you're not, it's not chemical. Put it that way.
And then I'm trying to use bokashi grains to kickstart my composting. Good idea or not?
I can't hear you. Sorry, say that again.
I'm trying to use bokashi grains. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong.
No, you're right.
To kickstart my composting. Good idea or not? Yeah,
that's fine. You do that indoors, bokashi. The Japanese technique. You buy in the bacteria that rots it down, basically. So the reason it's good and people like it is you can use all your kitchen waste, your meat, your fish, your etc., your dairy, and you literally have it in a container in the kitchen. It's odorless. It's a great way to do it, especially in confined spaces.
So if we'll finish the session. So thank you, Chris, Head of Horticulture for Garden Organic and a former Blue Peter gardener, for your session tonight. It's been brilliant. Would you quickly like to share where you are over the next few days in case people want to come and see you?
Certainly, I'm at Gardeners World Live. So we're Garden Organic are running a stage there. So I'm hosting it. There's some good guests. We've got a few from Gardeners World, Rekha and Ashley. We've got August from Le Manoir, the famous mansion out there. There's some good guests. We'll have some Q&As. There'll be a lot of stuff on Heritage Seeds 50th anniversary. So yeah, if you're in the area, please do come along. You can find us quite easy. So I'm there Friday, Saturday, and Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and our CEO Fiona will be there on Saturday.
Thank you very much, everyone, and please don't forget to drop your score in the chat before you leave the session tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.